This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome everybody to week 9 of the CISA book club. I know we had a little bit of a hiatus there. We've got so many people kind of on the road lately, so we can go ahead and get started. This schedule, apologize for this one. This one looks like we need to update a little bit. Looks like the week's a little bit off, but today's obviously 3/29, but we are on domain 4. We will try to get that updated before we upload it. And Sherry, are these page references right? I didn't really even double check this.
Yes, those are for this week.
Okay, cool. How's everybody doing on their reading? Cricket.
Uh-oh.
Sean was about to say
I've
something.
been reading.
Oh, good. How about the CISA book? Has anybody really poured through any of the questions on that? I think I've mentioned in the past that was kind of my favorite resource.
Are we hearing that we're a little behind? Not a lot of time to study, or?
I read next week's encryption chapter.
Yeah, good,
right.
good.
All right, so here's kind of the topics we're going over for domain 4. A lot of this stuff is, kind of very operational in nature. So anybody who's kind of come from an operational background, which is me, this stuff was a little bit easier for. If you haven't been from an operational background, that might be newer for you. Disaster recovery planning for those of us who do PCI assessments. Disaster recovery really doesn't play much of a role. So that might be new to a lot of us. And there's more auditing things. So any of us, again, involved in any PCI stuff, some of this should be pretty familiar to us. And we can get right into the discussion questions. Before we get into the discussion questions, Sherry, you had kind of talked about our guest speaker next week, and I think that might have been before a few other people joined. So I don't know if you want to give a quick rundown of that.
Sure. So Jeff Mann, who used to be a crypto analyst for NSA, is going to come and talk to us about the encryption, but he's going to make it specific to what encryption means for CISA. Because if you talk to people, encryption can mean anything. And in fact, if you start looking for the word encryption in our book, it shows up in almost every section. So he's going to really get into it, talking about the difference between symmetric, asymmetric encryption, just really talking about, again, encryption as it pertains to CISA, storage, in transit, that kind of thing. So I'm looking really forward to that.
And the whole RSP practice is invited, I think.
Yes, we haven't opened that up.
Okay.
Not yet, but it will be.
Okay, cool. And we'll kind of dive right into the questions here. This one I didn't think was quite as easy as it should be, but I'll kind of read it and kind of give everybody a moment to think about it. Which of the following is true regarding how application software is managed in terms of recovery site planning? Application software must already be running at a cold site. Application software should be installed at a hot site. Application software is not normally installed at a cold site. Application software is not normally installed at a warm site.
I didn't like this question either.
Yeah, I think for me, I think I can eliminate them pretty easily, but 2 of them could be the correct answer.
B has to be true, I would think. and C?
I would agree with that.
I think the answer is
Except
C.
I would say,
Anybody else have any comments? I'll just jump to the answer there. And so that's I thought that B and C were out, but they obviously like C better.
yeah, the only thing I can think of for B, application software should be installed at the hot site. It shouldn't only should be. If that's your hot site, it must be, you would think. But
Yeah.
still, you could read that as correct. Must already be running at a cold site, easy to eliminate.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're trying to make a distinction between like operating system and application software, but still on a hot site, that's kind of the whole point of a hot site is to, hit the ground running. So not quite sure I agree with that, but that kind of comes down to between B and C. And
Actually, sorry, Sherry, your analysis of the word should there, the last sentence in the explanation is application software should already be up and running to minimize transition time. So should is used there. So it's how can it be up and running without being installed? Oh well.
It can't be.
Yeah, we're going to forward that question to legal.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Okay. Which of the following protocols is the best choice for transmitting transaction files? I thought this one was easy to kind of lose focus on too.
Different layers of protocols. TFTP is up at layer 7, right? Or application layer. The others are not.
I think what they're looking for here is by using the word transaction, they're trying to imply that it's guaranteed delivery, and TCP is the only answer that supplies that. TFTP is not. It's an application level protocol, and it's insecure, unauthenticated anyway. So
I
you are
think
exactly
that is
correct.
Analysis. When the first time I read this, I saw best choice and TFTP. I thought, okay, that's insecure right there, but I wasn't really focusing on transaction files, so his analysis was superior. He is correct.
I noticed a number of test questions around differentiating between TCP and UDP in terms of guaranteed delivery, guaranteed sequence of delivery, retransmission of failed packets. So it seems like they're going to ask.
I remembered that after I saw the question. It's like, oh yeah, that transaction files is where they, or that's a keyword they kind of want you to be aware of in some of these test questions. A new CIO needs to gather information about applications. What does the CIO need to create?
Well, it must be B or D.
I was going to say the same thing.
D seems like the obvious answer. But...
Let's see.
And that is correct.
Somebody got a bell.
And Sherry, this diagram that's in here on the, I don't know if you want to say 2 words about that.
Yeah, it's actually, I kept wondering what an application portfolio would look like. And so I actually went out to Google And I came up with an example of what one could look like. And I like the way it put in the, if you're looking for an application portfolio, you really do want to know, like, if it's for sales, or in this case, if it's for trading, or if it would be operational, or if it would be marketing, or, there's a lot of different departments that would have different criticalities of software. So seeing that across there, I thought that was really neat to see.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a good thing to ask for in future assessments. Where's your application portfolio?
Application portfolio is now required to be GDPR compliant. You have to maintain a sheet like this. Slightly different purpose here, but
Aaron, it's really excellent too for doing your disaster recovery planning or your BIA, trying to make sure which applications need to come up first, which ones can you, not have for a longer period of time. You really need to know who, I just think that this really plays into that as well.
Yeah, good supplemental information on that. Thank you. An IS auditor is reviewing the disaster recovery plans for an online service provider and has found that the DR plans are reviewed and updated annually. Which statement best describes the finding that the auditor should write? I like this question.
So
you do or do not?
I think the answer is D, because I think I've seen this question before and I got it wrong.
Yeah.
What I like about this question is there are other similar questions which, with the wording, is tweaked a little bit, and the focus has always been on testing on those other ones. So that's why I like this question, because it kind of is a different take on a similar question with a little bit of a different answer. The two things that I've seen with regards to DR plans are, testing and updated annually. So it seems like when you see examples of questions similar to these, the answer is always going to be either, test it to make sure it works, or make sure you are updating the plan regularly, because sometimes annually is not enough because things change so often.
I think this is another question that would give some of us a problem who are QSAs, because the requirement to do it annually.
Yeah, I think this is a terrible question, because when I first read this, my first response when I read through the answers was, well, it depends. Like, there's not enough information here to answer this.
I agree, Paul.
Yeah, I think you can put that it depends on 90% of them, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Gilbert. Why do mobile devices require compensating controls to reduce the risk of data compromise?
The answer is A.
That is correct. On this one, I thought if you've got MDM on your mind, you might tend to bite on D, but that is the correct answer. An auditor is auditing a retail store, needs to select individual stores. There are newer stores with newer technology and older stores with older technology. Which sampling technique is best suited for this audit?
It seems like it must be B, because if you it's got to be one of the first two, though. If you just relied on statistical sampling, you might miss one of those two categories of stores. So judgmental sampling would lead you to select examples from both categories.
Is that attribute sampling a thing? And if so, what is it?
There's a bunch of questions about attribute sampling. It is a thing. And the answer is usually it's to test compliance with controls.
Right.
Actually,
I
let's
like
see.
your
Attribute sampling is a technique used to study the characteristics of a population to determine how many samples possess a specific characteristic. So quite often you'll see a question that'll say, what sampling would you do to find out how many? And that would be your attribute sampling. The discovery sampling is the one where, let me get you a good definition so I'm not making it up out of my head. Discovering sampling is where you are knowing that you're probably going to have at least one exception somewhere, so you're really looking for something specific. So you're really trying to discover something. Judgmental is when you're making an opinion. You're really saying, what is this? And I don't know if they say, do they define?
I like all that.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just saying I like the analysis, and I think we mostly voted on B, and that is correct. Is this a guy being judgmental?
Yes, he's thinking and saying,
Very
It
condescending.
looks like Poindexter.
In an event where the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of information or an information system has been compromised, is called a
Charlie, security incident.
ding, ding, ding. Which of the following threats is uniquely vulnerable to voice over IP systems in addition to the normal threats any IP-based network would face? This kind of goes back to an earlier conversation we had about ancient things that have, are still in play here.
Got to be Delta, toll fraud, because any other IP-based network would have the other three, but not usually toll fraud.
Yeah.
I agree.
Which of the following best describes residual risk? I think this is a good one to kind of talk through all the choices too.
So it's
I'll
not
eliminate A, because A is the definition of transferred risk, I think.
and it's not B, because that's inherent risk.
Yeah, it also
So,
says fine.
yeah, and it looks like the answer is C.
Killing it.
I think Paul's been studying.
Yeah, it sounds.
My mind
Either
has
that-
been turned to Isaka mush.
I'm so sorry.
But I understand how you think now.
All of the following organization requirements are considered during the requirements definition phase of the SDLC, except I think this is an easy question.
It's C.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been kind of similar questions where they're kind of similar questions, and they'll throw in an answer where you're kind of really in the weeds, and the code design would definitely fall into that, I think. code design is accomplished later in the SDLC. Which network access protocol is used to control whether a system is permitted to connect to enterprise network resources? I thought this was a tough question.
I believe the answer is it's either A or D. I think it's D.
Like D.
They're referring to NAC here.
Man, you really are on it. Good job.
You guys are killing it.
If they just said the enterprise network, it would have been a better question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when they throw in the word access and, you kind of, it's easy to bite on Kerberos.
Yeah, agree.
In the context of routers and firewalls, which of the following best describes the use of access control lists? I think it's another one that's got a couple answers that are correct, and we need to choose the best one.
I'll say B is correct. Which one else might be correct, Clark?
C.
Yeah, I think whenever I saw any questions on access control lists, I had the same thought. There are different types of access control lists, but all the questions I saw where they use that term, they're referring to router access control lists. So I think the answer is B. Sorry, router traffic access control lists, not user logical access controls.
So what are we?
B.
What are we doing? B is Bravo. Okay. Good job. Yeah. So they're basically, just as he indicated, they're focusing on the core protocols and services, and not so much, the who.
Yeah, I looked at a lot of questions, and I'm kind of paranoid about their terminology because they use strange terminology, but I never found a case. In every case where they use the term ACL, they were referring to router ACLs, not other kinds of logical access controllers.
I think everyone should hang on to that statement like grim death.
Watch me be proven wrong on that. Yeah, a lot of this is just understanding their terminology.
Yeah. Which of the following network components is primarily set up to serve as a security measure by preventing unauthorized traffic between segments of the network?
Sounds like a firewall.
Yeah, agreed.
And there we have it. Give you guys a moment to read that explanation there. All right. Which method of testing disaster recovery plans will enable an organization to fully exercise and evaluate its disaster recovery capabilities? I would read that as
it's got to be either B or C, and maybe to fully exercise, you got to drop what's working and switch fully to C.
I also vote for C, but I think it's a trick question somehow. But I think it's Charlie.
Okay, I think I like your analysis. So yeah, they're going for the most intensive here. Which sampling technique is used when an IS auditor is trying to find at least one exception of population? We kind of covered this a little bit earlier.
It's C, discovery sampling.
Yeah, so this one, we kind of seen a little bit of this before, but these type of questions, we're going to go, just need to know those definitions. I mean, sometimes the term is somewhat intuitive, but sometimes it's not. Like on this one, just make sure you understand the difference between stop and go and discovery. And he continues to kill it. Paul, did you already sign up for the test?
I am scheduled to take the test next Tuesday.
Oh, really? Wow.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Well, hold on to the congratulations. Some of these questions are just like maddening. I can't figure out what they're asking.
Which of the following is not a valid form of risk?
Charlie, C.
Yeah, I think on this one, you'll see a lot of terms about risk treatment, and closure should look foreign to us, I think. That should be pretty straightforward. I think we're doing pretty good on time here. Which RAID level creates a mirror where data written to one disk in the array is also written to a second disk in the array, making the volume more reliable through the preservation of data even when one disk in the array fails?
The answer is A.
And I think most of the time these answers, I think you'll see some references to RAID 5 and RAID 1 mirroring, but I don't remember see it coming across any of the other RAID references.
I second that. I only saw questions about RAID 1 and RAID 5.
And I think RAID 0 is like striping without any parity bits, which is just for performance, but it doesn't give you any, I don't even know what 6 is.
It's like 5, but with an extra.
An example of a policy that will be developed to support a law or regulation is a
Well, that's an interesting one.
I think this is a good one to think of. If we think of it, of how it, what influence it has from the outside world when we're talking about law or regulation.
Yeah. So I'm going to guess C, privacy policy. The others are
I'll go with A.
A, huh?
If the law says protect health data, well, you better have a way of identifying it. So
Actually,
Do you know what's interesting? Sorry.
I agree. I think it could be either one.
What I have seen is every time when it talks about a law, it's talking about privacy. I've just seen those two linked continually. I never really see them talking about a law for any of the other ones. I have a funny feeling there may not be an answer slide, but you were correct with it being C.
The funny thing is, it could be kind of any of them, right? If you think about it hard enough.
Yeah, I think on this one, though, the one to think about is, I don't know if just because everybody's into it right now, but privacy policy is the one that the book always links laws to.
Yeah. And another one of those little tidbits that you need to hang on to, with, like grim death.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
this privacy
Oh, your
policy.
stats, okay. Yeah, here they're saying that it's because, wait, go back if you would, because they're saying that privacy policies are actually strictly and closely driven by law and regulation. The other ones, like they're saying they may have some link, but privacy is driven by it.
Yeah, I think B and D, I think we can pretty much conclude that those are both, going to be strictly internal, and the other stuff about other especially kind of the newer regulation stuff where A might come into play. But we're kind of dealing with the dinosaur here. Jerry indicated they always seem to default to these with privacy policy. Which of the following risk analysis methods is the most appropriate to use in an organization that requires an additional analysis of higher ranked risks? I thought this was kind of a question.
I think the answer is C, quantitative risk analysis.
Again, right on it. Good job.
Yeah, I think Paul.
Always think of.
Are B and D actually a thing? Like I know what qualitative and quantitative are, but I don't know what B and D are.
Yeah,
I don't think there is a probability.
Yeah, I mean, here you got the BIA thing. But, yeah, I think,
probability analysis is a thing.
Okay.
If you want a definition, it's on page 42. I can get you a definition.
Page 42, thanks.
It is on page 42.
For any given threat and asset, the probability that the threat will actually be realized needs to be estimated. This is often easier said than done, as there is a lack of reliable data on security incidents. A risk manager still will need to perform some research and develop a best guess. That's probability analysis. What was the other one?
Impact analysis.
Impact.
There is an
on
impact
page 42
analysis
as well.
that says the analysis of a threat and the impact it would have if it were realized. The thing to think about on these is that quantitative is always at a much more detailed level. Qualitative, you're just looking at high, medium, low, but when you start going into the quantitative, you're really looking at putting in true costs and really getting down to what the risk really is. And so when it says higher ranked risks, and requiring an additional analysis, I always think of quantitative because that's the one that you're really digging deep into it.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed a number of questions about that. And it just occurred to me, the reason probability and impact aren't appropriate here is they're not risk analysis. The combination of probability and impact are risk analysis. So it could only be A or C, and it's C for the reasons Sherry stated.
Yeah.
Show us.
Good job. And just like Sherry indicated, more in-depth is the quantitative, where you're trying to numberify everything. Which of the following project management frameworks is not process-based? I think this is going to be another one of those things where you just need to really know the definitions of these and kind of the subtle differences.
I'm going to guess B, Scrum. C is not a project management framework.
No.
Or do we decide?
I'm not confident at all in that answer, though.
Yeah, and that's
CMM,
kind
what
of
it's doing is it's measuring the maturity of your processes. It's really not a management framework.
I feel like I've seen that question before and got it wrong before.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Which type of attack attempts to open, which type of attack attempts to discover open and possibly vulnerable ports on target systems?
Could it be B?
I like the.
Sounds like we have a consensus. Alrighty.
I found that they kind of spook you. Like they throw all these weird questions at you, and then they throw an easy one, and you're thinking like, surely this has to be a trick.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Ports. And these you're going to definitely need to know. The period from the onset of an outage until the resumption of service is known as the
I like Delta.
Yeah,
Yep, D.
it's a B or D.
What throws me on these questions is it's basically saying the period. It's not really talking about objective. So from that standpoint, that just the way they word that, I think throws people off. But I think I heard an A in there somewhere. So that's what they're looking for here.
Yeah, how can an objective be the actual?
Yeah. I wasn't a big fan of this question.
Yeah,
One of
it's
the
just
things
terrible.
about
RTO.
What they mean is the RTO that you define is the maximum period from the onset of an outage until resumption of service, or the target. Yeah, there's a bunch of
But
questions.
it's the desired maximum, maybe not the maximum, I would presume.
One thing that is a really good firm answer on this one is recovery point objective. When you're looking at recovery point objective, that's talking about the data. So it's like at what point are you able to recover the data that you're losing? So that's actually one that you can kind of put aside because it's data specific.
Where did this question come from?
That's actually chapter 2.
I mean, sorry, did it come from the CISA review manual or the Peter Gregory book or some other source?
Actually, I think it came off, if I recall, the CD that came with the book.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I found that I felt like the quality and internal logic consistency of the questions in the CISA review manual were better than the questions from the Peter Gregory book for whatever that's worth. There was some questions he had I didn't agree with.
Yeah, I was a big fan of that pocketbook. Of the 4 possible methods for risk treatment, which one typically involves the use of insurance, which is used to compensate the organization for the financial losses or damages that occur if the threat were realized?
The answer is C.
And Paul says so definitively, and he is right.
Because you're really transferring the risk to the insurance company, a lot of the liability.
I have a good old explanation right there. public key infrastructure is based on what kind of keys? And this one is kind of a strict memory one, strict fact.
Like B, asymmetric or public key pairs. And just to go back to the previous one, sorry, TTR, time to recover, not a term, I guess is why that one is incorrect.
Good reason.
Oops, where am I going here? Sorry. Apologize for that.
You know, one thing, well, that's right. He's already given the correct answer, but I don't know if y'all want to. One of the things that kind of struck me, look on the very right of this slide and you see asymmetric and you see symmetric. Symmetric, everything is the same. So with a symmetric key, you would have to be sharing a private key. With asymmetric, something's different than the other piece of it. So you have the public and the private. I don't know if that helped anybody else, but
I guess we're done with that one.
does anybody have any questions on that one, or we can wait and ask Jeff next week?
Yeah, we should, when we start off with Jeff, we should just give him that question. If he gets it wrong, we can discredit anything he says, right?
It's a good thing to do to your speaker.
Yeah, I'll feed him the answer in advance on that one. Which personnel should be chosen for a disaster recovery core team that would, which personnel should be chosen for a disaster recovery core team that would declare a disaster?
I think the key here is the word declare. And so it has to be A or B. The argument for A would be you need someone with appropriate authority to declare a disaster. And the argument for B would be you need someone familiar with the business operations to know what's a disaster. And I honestly don't know which one of those it is.
I like your analysis.
I'm going to guess A.
I'll back your guess with another guess, A.
I'm not confident at all in that, though.
My computer just freeze.
Yep, that's what I thought.
B. Yeah, so they're basically keying on the familiarity with the critical business operations.
Yep.
Executive management has your clouds on this one, apparently. Which automated attack method is effectively thwarted by the account lockout security measure? This one should be easy.
Eliminate the offline ones because offline ones can't be protected by a lockout mechanism. The online portion is required to enforce the lockout. So A and B are incorrect.
It's kind of weird wording for the last two. They don't seem mutually exclusive. Like I would use a dictionary force attack, dictionary based, but I'm guessing it's D.
I think your analysis was on point, and I have the explanation they give here. If we want to take a moment to read that.
Yeah, and dictionary attacks involve pre-computing the hashes for the dictionary.
Yeah, that's the
which
key.
I think the term applies a little more generally, I would think, but oh well.
That's a good question, Jeff.
Yeah. Which term is the foundation for IS controls and is a statement of desired states or outcomes from business operations? I thought this was a tough question.
The answer is A, and I'm 100% confident.
All right, wow.
Wow.
I'm pretty confident. I don't know. I think it's A. The second half of that sentence is a statement of desired outcomes or from business operations is a phrase they commonly use with control objective. That's the point of a control objective. First part of that sentence confuses me a little bit, but I think it's A.
I wish there was some way I could like bet money on you and your test results on Tuesday.
I think, I'll bet. He's going to pass. Anybody want to take on that?
Yeah. I'll write you a
I wish
letter.
I was as confident as you guys. I thank you for the kind words. I'm actually pretty nervous about this test because some of these questions are just so maddening.
They are, and what's really smart is that you're nervous about the test because it's not easy, and you know that, so therefore you'll probably do really well.
Yeah.
Anybody wants to take a moment to read that explanation?
Actually, before we dismiss today, I got a question for you too, Paul. I'll wait till we're done all this though.
Okay.
Who signs the digital certificate providing assurance that the certificate and the identifying information it contains is valid? This one should be easy.
Answer is D.
Any dissent? Everyone's afraid to. Everyone's afraid to bet against Paul.
D's correct as well in a different way. It might be the correct answer.
Well, can we talk through this for a minute before we unveil the answer? So my understanding is that the registration authority is the group or organization that verifies your valid info, and that can be the same as a certificate authority, or it can be delegated by the certificate authority before the certificate authority signs and issues the certificate. That's my thinking. That's why I think it's Delta. Does anyone?
Oh, you do think it's Delta? Or I thought you said Bravo.
Authority.
Again, you were spot on.
Look at the answer.
Okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if I was my phone got there.
Oh yeah, they have the RA there in the diagram.
I like the way you stated it. It really was what you said. You did good. I really think you're so close to. You are ready for this test. You're going to do great.
All right, we're done with that one.
I think. Are we saying also that there is no such thing as an issuing authority? I guess that's what that one's about, I think.
Okay. When a message is signed using a private key and verified as a public key, this action fulfills the message. Kind of a tougher question.
I think it's Charlie. Charlie, because when it's signed with a private key that only one person controls, that's what makes it authentic, is coming from that source. And also the integrity is part of it, because it's if you change a byte of it, the signature is invalid. So it verifies both authenticity and integrity. If the question said it was signed with the public key, then we get into confidentiality potentially, because only the other person can decrypt it. But when it's signed with a private key, anybody has access to the public key and can verify authenticity and integrity.
Yeah, I agree.
Good job.
Good analysis.
Yeah.
The explanation on this one, I think, is pretty good too.
I saw a fair number of questions testing to see if you understand the difference between signing a message to determine authenticity versus signing a message to confirm that the message hasn't been altered versus encrypting a message to hide the contents. So all the questions I thought were fairly straightforward, but did require some understanding of PKI infrastructure.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I like the way you said that, by the way.
Yeah. They seem pretty keen on testing those concepts.
Well, after Tuesday, you can teach the next class here.
Okay.
I'm not sure that was a joke. An organization is considered to its network backbone. I hate this question, by the way. Which aspects of its architecture should be considered?
Wow.
When you break that one apart, A, B, and C all have something to do with physical security. So if physical security isn't a part of that, you know that D is probably not the right answer, because you have 3 that include it. You have 2 of them that include power. Of those 3, all of them include compatibility with standards. Well, no, one says compatibility and the other 2 are with standards. And then you have your cost.
Charlie's the only one without cost. And if we're talking about auditing, I don't see how cost matters.
That's correct.
So what do we decide on?
Bad question.
Sean decided on C.
Okay. Bing. I still have a real tough time separating network architecture from cost, but I understand why they're, what they're trying to go at. It's kind of similar to some other stuff where that is kind of an after fact, kind of considering that in the weeds or something.
Yeah, that's a good test taking strategy analysis of this question, though. So only 2 answers are not like the others. C is the only one that doesn't include costs, and D is the only one that doesn't include physical security. And presumably physical security is important to an IS auditor, so it must be costs they don't care about. But it's a terrible question.
Yeah. Actually, I think the important part of the question isn't about even IS auditing. Now that I read it, it's which aspects of the architecture. So cost isn't in an architecture. That's what.
I'm not sure I'd ever be convinced of that, but I'll just they don't like cost when talking about architecture. I guess that's the fact we need to hang on to on that one. And that is the conclusion of our test questions. I don't think we had a lot changed on this question, this slide. Sherry, I think that the resources we have listed there are the same, right?
They are, yes.
Okay. Well, great. Sounds like we're moving along here. We've got, that was week 9. We've got week 10 and week 11 still to go.
And next week will be all about encryption. Woohoo!
And my congratulations to Paul was good. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if this has been fully decided yet, Sherry, but if Jeff Mann, who is a treasure trove of information, if we want to give him kind of free reign, I don't know if we, and if we still want to have 30 practice questions in there, we might need to bump the time up to 90 minutes or something.
Yeah, I'll work with him on that. I think that he was actually going to present or create some slides based on the information as it means to CISA. So I can work with him on getting some questions that we can go through at the end of it based on how long he thinks he's going to speak.
Okay. That sounds good. Sounds like we had some pretty impressive question analysis today.
Yes, and it sounds like we have at least 2 people who are really ready to take the exam.
Yeah.
Sean.
Paul, my congratulations was going to be booking the exam because I am unable to on this terrible website. I've tried 2 browsers. It keeps giving me errors of Google Maps and locating, and I can't find an exam no matter what I do, and I'm flipping, and it keeps giving me errors. So I'm just going to congratulate you on pulling that off. And I realize now that part of my problem is that there are no exams in my area, and I've been flipping through for months here, and it just keeps giving me errors. If I switch it to a different city, I get results. So I have to travel for my exam, it appears.
That's
wow. How far do you have to travel?
Well, Toronto's got it, so 3-hour flight or whatever, and I'm sure there'll be others, but Toronto might be the easiest. Maybe Minneapolis.
You know what? I did that when I took mine. I traveled. No, my CISSP was actually in San Antonio. That's the one I had to travel for. The CISA I took in Dallas.
Okay. Very good. Do you have any other questions, comments, jokes? I guess we are all done then. Well, thank you,
have
everybody.
to go to the last slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I figure the last slide is what people are really thinking right now.
Yep. That's how I feel.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. And Clark, it's great having you back.
Thanks. All righty. Guys, next week.
Thanks. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, all.